Manipulation of religious traditions and beliefs. The Allies of Humanity by Marshall Vian Summers, 4th briefing. In order to understand the visitors' activities in the world today, we must present more information regarding their influence on world religious institutions and values and on the fundamental spiritual impulses which are common to your nature and which in many ways are common to intelligent life in many parts of the greater community. We should begin by saying that the activities that the visitors are conducting in the world at this time have been carried on many times before in many different places with many different cultures in the greater community. Your visitors are not the originators of these activities, but merely use them at their own discretion to the extent that they are aware of them and have used them before. It is important for you to understand that skills in influence and manipulation have been developed to a very high degree of functionality in the greater community. As races become more adept and more capable technologically, they exert more subtle and more pervasive kinds of influence upon one another. Human beings have only evolved thus far to compete with each other, so you do not yet have this adaptive advantage. This in itself is one of the reasons why we are presenting this material to you. You are entering a whole new set of circumstances that require the cultivation of your inherent abilities as well as the learning of new skills. Though humanity represents a unique situation, emergence into the greater community has happened countless times before with other races. Therefore, what is being perpetrated upon you has been done before. It has been highly developed and is now being adapted to your life and to your situation with what we feel is relative ease. The pacification program that is being implemented by the visitors is making this possible in part. The natural inclination towards peaceful relations and the desire to avoid war and conflict are admirable, but can and indeed are being used against you. Even your most noble impulses can be used for other purposes. You have seen this in your own history, in your own nature, and in your own societies. Peace can only be established upon a firm foundation of wisdom, cooperation, and true ability. Humanity has naturally been concerned with establishing peaceful relations amongst its own tribes and nations. Now, however, it has a greater set of problems and challenges. We view these as opportunities for your development, for it will only be the challenge of emerging into the greater community that will unite the world and give you the foundation for this unity to be genuine, strong, and effective. Therefore, we come not to criticize your religious institutions or your most fundamental impulses and values, but to illustrate how they are being used against you by those alien races who are intervening in your world. And if it is within our power, we wish to encourage the right employment of your gifts and your accomplishments for the preservation of your world, your freedom, and your integrity as a race within a greater community context. The visitors are fundamentally practical in their approach. This is both a strength and a weakness. As we have observed them, both here and elsewhere, we see that it is difficult for them to deviate from their plans. They are not well adapted to change, nor can they deal with complexity very effectively. Therefore, they carry out their plan in an almost careless manner, for they fear that they are in the right and that they have the advantage. They do not believe that humanity will mount resistance against them, at least not resistance that will affect them greatly. And they fear that their secrets and their agenda are well preserved and are beyond human comprehension. In this light, our activity in presenting this material to you makes us their enemies, certain in their sight, In our side, however, we are merely attempting to counter their influence and to give you the understanding that you need and the perspective that you must rely upon to preserve your freedom as a race and to deal with the realities of the greater community. Due to the practical nature of their approach, they wish to accomplish their goals with the greatest efficiency possible. They wish to unite humanity, but only in accordance with their own participation and activities in the world. To them, human unity is a practical concern. They do not value diversity in cultures. They certainly do not value it within their own cultures. Therefore, they will attempt to eradicate it or minimize it, if possible, wherever they are exerting their influence. In our previous discourse, we talked about the visitors' influence on new forms of spirituality, on new ideas, and new expressions of human divinity and human nature that are in your world at this time. In our discussion now, we would like to focus on the traditional values and institutions that your visitors seek to influence and are influencing today. Seeking uniformity and conformity, the visitors will rely on those institutions and those values that they feel are the most stable and practical for their use. They are not interested in your ideas, and they are not interested in your values, except insofar as these things might further their agenda. Do not deceive yourself in thinking that they are drawn to your spirituality because they lack such a thing themselves. This would be a foolish and perhaps fatal mistake. Do not think that they are enamored with your life and with those things that you find to be intriguing, for only in rare cases will you be able to influence them in this way. All natural curiosity has been bred out of them, and very little remains. There is, in fact, very little of what you would call spirit, or what we would call varn, or the way of insight. They are controlled and controlling, and follow patterns of thinking and behavior that are firmly established and strictly reinforced. They might seem to empathize with your ideas, but it is only to gain your allegiance. In traditional religious institutions in your world, they will seek to utilize those values and those fundamental beliefs that can serve in the future to bring you into allegiance to them. Let us give you some examples, born both of our own observations and of the insight that the unseen ones have given us over time. Much of your world follows the Christian faith. We think this is admirable, though it is certainly not the only approach to the fundamental questions of spiritual identity and purpose in life. The visitors will utilize the fundamental idea of allegiance to a single leader in order to generate allegiance to their cause. Within the context of this religion, the identification with Jesus the Christ will be greatly utilized. The hope and the promise of His return to the world offers your visitors a perfect opportunity, particularly at this turning point in the millennium. It is our understanding that the true Jesus will not return to the world, for He is working in concert with the unseen ones and serves humanity and other races as well. The one who will come claiming His name will come from the greater community. He will be one who is born and bred for this purpose by the collectives that are in the world today. He will appear human and will have significant abilities compared to what you can accomplish at this moment. He will seem completely altruistic. He will be able to perform acts that will engender either fear or great reverence. He will be able to project images of angels, demons, or whatever his superior wish to expose you to. He will seem to have spiritual powers, yet he will come from the greater community. And he will be part of the collective. And he will engender allegiance to follow him. Eventually, for those who cannot follow him, he will encourage their alienation or their destruction. The visitors do not care how many of your people are destroyed, so long as they have a primary allegiance amongst the majority. Therefore, the visitors will focus on those fundamental ideas that give them this authority and influence. A second coming, then, is being prepared by your visitors. The evidence of this, we understand, is already in the world. People do not realize the presence of the visitors or the nature of reality in the greater community, and so they will naturally accept their prior beliefs without question, feeling that the time has come for the great return of their Savior and their teacher. But he who will not come from the heavenly host. He will not represent knowledge or the unseen ones, and he will not represent the Creator or the Creator's will. We have seen this plan in formulation in the world. We have also seen similar plans carried out in other worlds. In other religious traditions, uniformity will be encouraged by the visitors. What you might call a fundamental kind of religion based upon the past, based upon allegiance to authority, and based upon conformity to the institution. This serves the visitors. They are not interested in the ideology and values of your religious traditions, only in their usefulness. The more that people can think alike, act alike, and respond in predictable ways, the more useful they are to the collectives. This conformity is being promoted in many different traditions. The intent here is not to make them all the same, but to have them be simple within themselves. In one part of the world, one particular religious ideology will prevail. In a different part of the world, a different religious ideology will prevail. This is entirely useful to your visitors, for they do not care if there is more than one religion so long as there is order, conformity, and allegiance. Having no religion of their own that you could possibly follow or identify with, they will use yours to engender their own values, for they value only total allegiance to their cause and to the collectives, and seek your total allegiance to participate with them in ways that they prescribe. They will assure you that this will create peace and redemption in the world, and the return of whatever religious image or personage is considered of the greatest value here. This is not to say that the fundamental religion is governed by alien forces, for we understand that fundamental religion has been well established in your world. What we are saying here is that the impulses for this and the mechanisms for this will be supported by the visitors and used for their own purposes. Therefore, great care must be given by all who are true believers in their traditions to discern these influences and to counteract them if possible. Here it is not the average person in the world that the visitors seek to convince. It is the leadership. The visitors firmly believe that if they do not intervene in a timely manner, humanity will destroy itself and the world. This is not based upon truth. It is only an assumption. Though humanity is at risk of self-annihilation, this is not necessarily your destiny. But the collectives believe that this is so, and so they must act with haste and give their programs of persuasion great emphasis. Those who can be convinced will be valued as useful. Those that cannot be convinced will be discarded and alienated. Should the visitors become strong enough to gain complete control of the world, those who cannot conform will simply be eliminated. Yet the visitors will not do the destruction. It will be worked through the very individuals in the world who have fallen completely under their persuasion. This is a terrible scenario, we understand. But there must be no confusion if you are to understand and receive what we are expressing in our messages to you. It is not the annihilation of humanity. It is the integration of humanity that the visitors seek to accomplish. They will interbreed with you for this purpose. They will attempt to redirect your religious impulses and institutions for this purpose. They will establish themselves in a clandestine manner in the world for this purpose. They will influence governments and government leaders for this purpose. They will influence military powers in the world for this purpose. The visitors are confident that they can be successful, for so far they see that humanity has not yet mounted enough resistance to counteract their measures or to offset their agenda. To counteract this, you must learn the greater community way of knowledge. Any free race in the universe must learn the way of knowledge. However, it may be defined within their own cultures. This is the source of individual freedom. This is what enables individuals and societies to have true integrity and to have the wisdom necessary to deal with the influences that counteract knowledge, both within their worlds and within the greater community. It is, therefore, necessary to learn new ways, for you are entering a new situation with new forces and new influences. Indeed, this is not some future prospect, but an immediate challenge. Life in the universe does not wait upon your readiness. Events will happen whether you are prepared or not. Visitation has occurred without your agreement and without your permission. And your fundamental rights are being violated to a far greater degree than you yet realize. Because of this, we have been sent not only to give our perspective and our encouragement, but also to sound a calling, an alarm, to inspire an awareness and a commitment. We have said before that we cannot save your race through military intervention. That is not our role. And even if we attempted to do so and garner the strength to carry out such an agenda, your world would be destroyed. We can only advise. You will see in the future a ferocity of religious belief expressed in violent ways, carried out against people who disagree, against nations of less strength and used as a weapon of attack and destruction. The visitors would like nothing better than for your religious institutions to govern the nations. This you must resist. The visitors would like nothing better than to have religious values shared by everyone, for this adds to their labor force and makes their task easier. In all of its manifestations, such influence fundamentally reduces down to acquiescence and submission, submission of will, submission of purpose, submission of one's life and abilities. Yet, this will be heralded as a great achievement for humanity, a great advancement in society, a new unification for the human race, a new hope for peace and equanimity, a triumph of human spirit over human instincts. Therefore, we come with our counsel and encourage you to refrain from making unwise decisions, from giving your life over to things that you do not understand, and from acquiescing your discernment and your discretion for the sake of any promised reward. And we must encourage you not to betray knowledge within yourself, the spiritual intelligence with which you were born, which now holds your only and greatest promise. Perhaps, in hearing this, you will view the universe as a place devoid of grace. Perhaps you will become cynical and afraid, thinking that avarice is universal. But this is not the case. What is needed now is for you to become strong, stronger than you are, stronger than you have been. Do not welcome communications with those intervening in your world until you have this strength. Do not open your minds and hearts to visitors from beyond the world, for they come here for their own purposes. Do not think that they will fulfill your religious prophecies or greatest ideas, for this is a delusion. There are great spiritual forces in the greater community, individuals and even nations that have achieved very high states of accomplishment, far beyond what humanity has demonstrated thus far. But they do not come and take control of other worlds. They do not represent political and economic forces in the universe. They are not involved in commerce beyond fulfilling their own fundamental needs. They rarely travel, except in situations of emergency. Emissaries are sent to help those who are emerging into the greater community. Emissaries such as ourselves. And there are spiritual emissaries as well, the power of the unseen ones, who can speak to those who are ready to receive and who show good heart and good promise. This is how God works in the universe. You are entering a difficult new environment. Your word is very valuable to others. You will need to protect it. You will need to preserve your resources so that you do not require or depend upon trade with other nations for the fundamental necessities of your life. If you do not preserve your resources, you will have to relinquish much of your freedom and self-sufficiency. Your spirituality must be sound. It must be based upon real experience, for values and beliefs, rituals and traditions can be used and are being used by your visitors for their own purpose. Here, you can begin to see that your visitors are very vulnerable in certain areas. Let us explore this further. Individually, they have very little will and have difficulty dealing with complexities. They do not understand your spiritual nature. They most certainly do not understand the impulses of knowledge. The stronger you are with knowledge, the more inexplicable you become. The harder you are to control, and the less useful you become to them and to their program of integration. Individually, the stronger you are with knowledge, the greater challenge you become to them. The more individuals that become strong with knowledge, the more difficult it is for the visitors to isolate them. The visitors do not have physical strength. Their power is in mental environment and in the use of their technologies. Their numbers are small compared to yours. They are wholly reliant upon your acquiescence, and they are overly confident that they can succeed, based upon their experience so far. Humanity has not offered significant resistance. Yet the stronger you are with knowledge, the more you become a force that opposes intervention and manipulation, and the more you become a force for freedom and integrity for your race. Though perhaps not many will be able to hear our message, your response is important. Perhaps it is easy to disbelieve our presence and our reality and to react against our message. Yet we speak in accordance with knowledge. Therefore, what we are saying can be known within you if you are free to know it. We understand that we challenge many beliefs and conventions in our presentation. Even our appearance here will seem inexplicable and will be rejected by many. Yet our words and our message can resonate with you because we speak with knowledge. The power of truth is the greatest power in the universe. It has the power to free. It has the power to enlighten. And it has the power to give strength and confidence to those who need it. We are told that human conscience is highly valued, though perhaps rarely practiced. It is this that we are speaking of when we talk about the way of knowledge. It is fundamental to all of your true spiritual impulses. It is contained in your religions already. It is not new to you, but it must be valued, or Our efforts and the efforts of the unseen ones to prepare humanity for the greater community will not be successful. Too few will respond, and the truth will be a burden for them, for they will not be able to share it effectively. Therefore, we come not to criticize your religious institutions or conventions, but only to illustrate how they can be used against you. We are not here to replace them or to deny them, but to show how true integrity must pervade these institutions and conventions in order for them to serve you in a genuine way. In the greater community, spirituality is embedded in what we call knowledge. Knowledge meaning the intelligence of spirit and the movement of spirit within you. This empowers you to know rather than only believe. This gives immunity from persuasion and manipulation. For knowledge cannot be manipulated by any worldly power or force. This gives life to your religions and hope for your destiny. We hold true to these ideas, for they are fundamental. They are lacking in the collectives, however, and should you encounter the collectives, or even their presence, and have the power to maintain your own mind, you will see this for yourself. We are told that there are many people in the world who wish to give themselves over, to give themselves away to a greater power in life. This is not unique to the world of humanity, but in the greater community, such an approach leads to enslavement. We understand it in your own world, but for the visitors who are here in such numbers, such an approach often led to enslavement. But in the greater community, you are more vulnerable and must be wiser, more careful, and more self-sufficient. Recklessness here brings with it a heavy price and a great misfortune. If you can respond to knowledge and learn a greater community way of knowledge, you will be able to see these things for yourself. Then you will confirm our words rather than only believe them or deny them. The Creator is making this possible, for the Creator wills that humanity prepare for its future. That is why we have come. That is why we are watching and now have the opportunity to report what we see. The religious traditions of the world speak well for you in their essential teachings. We have had the opportunity to learn about them from the unseen ones. But they also represent a potential weakness. If humanity were more vigilant and understood the realities of life in the greater community and the meaning of premature visitation, your risks would not be so great as they are today. There is hope and expectation that such a visitation will bring great rewards and will be a fulfillment for you. Yet you have not been able to learn of the reality of the greater community, or of the powerful forces that are interacting with your world. Your lack of understanding and premature trust in the visitors do not serve you. It is for this reason that the wise throughout the greater community remain hidden. They do not seek commerce in the greater community. They do not seek to be a part of guilds or trading cooperatives. They do not seek diplomacy with many words. Their network of allegiance is more mysterious, more spiritual in nature. They understand the risks and the difficulties of exposure to the realities of life in the physical universe. They maintain their insulation, and they remain vigilant at their borders. They only seek to extend their wisdom through means that are less physical in nature. In your own world, perhaps, you can see this expressed in those who are the wisest, the most gifted, who do not seek personal advantage through commercial avenues and who are not given to conquest and manipulation. Your own world tells you so much. Your own history tells you so much and illustrates, though on a smaller scale, everything that we are presenting to you here. Thus, it is our intention not only to warn you of the gravity of your situation, but to provide you, if we can, a greater perception and understanding of life, which you need. And we trust that there will be enough who can hear these words and respond to the greatness of knowledge. We hope there will be those who can recognize that our messages are not here to evoke fear and panic, but to engender responsibility and a commitment to the preservation of freedom and good within your world. If humanity should fail in opposing the intervention, we can paint a picture of what this would mean. We have seen it elsewhere, for each one of us came very close within our own worlds. Being part of a collective, the planet Earth will be mined for its resources. Its people will be corralled to work, and its rebels and heretics will be either alienated or destroyed. The world will be preserved for its agriculture and its mining interests. Human societies will exist, but only in subordination to powers from beyond your world. And should the world exhaust its usefulness, should its resources be completely taken, then you will be left, bereft. The supportive life upon your world will have been taken from you. The very means of survival will have been stolen. This has happened before in many other places. In the case of this world, the collectives may choose to preserve the world for ongoing use as a strategic post and as a biological storehouse. Yet human population would suffer terribly under such oppressive rule. The population of humanity would be reduced. The management of humanity would be given to those who are bred to lead the human race within a new order. Human freedom as you know it would no longer exist, and you would suffer under the weight of foreign rule, a rule that would be harsh and exacting. There are many collectives in the greater community. Some of them are large, some of them are small. Some of them are more ethical in their tactics, many are not. To the extent that they compete with one another for opportunities, such as the rule of your world, dangerous activities can be perpetrated. We must give these illustrations so that you will have no doubt as to what we are saying. The choices before you are very limited, but very fundamental. Therefore, understand that from your visitor's perspective, you are all tribes that need to be managed and controlled in order to serve the visitor's interests. For this, your religions and a certain degree of your social reality will be preserved. But you will lose much, and much will be lost before you realize what has been taken from you. Therefore, we can only advocate a vigilance, a responsibility, and a commitment to learn about life in the greater community, to learn how to preserve your own culture and your own reality within a greater environment, and to learn how to see who is here to serve you and distinguish them from those who are not. This greater discernment is so needed in the world, even for the resolution of your own difficulties. But regarding your survival and well-being in the greater community, it is absolutely fundamental. Therefore, we encourage you to take heart. We have more to share with you.